Stadia podcast, episode number 80. You join myself, Chris, one of your hosts for today, alongside the techie teacher himself, Mr. Tom.
Had a bit of a giggle before this episode, didn't we, today?
We did.
So I think I'm going to have the giggles throughout this episode. So just embrace it, guys. Just embrace it.
The gigs, the Easter Sunday giggles.
Easter Sunday gigs.
He's had too much chocolate, ladies and gentlemen. And below him, we have the man of many pixels, Mr. Richie. How are you?
I'm a little tired. I maybe stayed up a bit too late last night, but it was for good reasons.
For good reasons, which we'll definitely talk about in just a moment. You're joining us, ladies and gentlemen, for, of course, episode 80 of the Sounds of Stadia podcast, your weekly podcast where we round up all of the gaming and Stadia news for your enjoyment. And we are the longest running Stadia podcast this side of Google Maps. So if you are new to the show, if you're new to the channel, do give us a like down below for the video if you're watching on youtube.com/Sounds of Stadia, or rate us, review us if you're listening on podcast services out there in the digital hemisphere, ecosphere, atmosphere. Don't know why I kept saying loads of spheres, because it's Easter and there's eggs everywhere, gentlemen. We're going on an Easter egg hunt for Stadia. Somehow
spherical.
They kind of are if you roll them.
Yeah, if you make them no longer egg-shaped, they are, yes.
Well, what counts as spherical, right? Let's get into it. Forget the Stadia news. Spherical, right? If it's spherical, it's just rounded, right?
3D...
Yes, it's a 3D circle.
It's a 3D circle. A sphere is an actual shape. It's not just something that is rounded.
All right, I hear
chocolate orange.
All right, I hear where you're going with this, Richie. But if something was like kind of round and it's a bit spherical, that you could class an egg as a bit spherical, right?
You could describe something as being a bit spherical,
Tom,
yes.
what the hell is that? Is that a Fabergé egg?
Not quite. It's something that I've shittily printed on my 3D printer. It's a golden egg.
Crush it with your bare hands.
Shittily done, to be honest. It looks pretty well done.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like a dragon egg,
focus,
like a Game of Thrones.
It was meant to be a dragon egg. Yeah, it was meant to be a dragon egg, but thought it was, obviously appropriate for today's episode.
Of course. So speaking of dragging things out, let's get into the Sounds of Stadia podcast, episode 80 show. We've got a great show for you all this week. We're going to be covering all of your exciting April Pro games, alongside some new title game announcements, and we're also going to discuss if Stadia could help with the future of game preservation, as some of their competition seems to have thrown in the towel with some of their legacy content. We'll be covering that and much, much more, so stay tuned, keep it locked to our channel, and we'll be breaking that down. But before we do get into all that, a little bit of housekeeping for all of our lovely listeners and viewers out there. We've had a busy couple of weeks, and so some many people in the Stadia community. As of half an hour ago at the time of recording, our wonderful friends Stadia Dad and all the crew he's pulled together, you've probably seen it over on Twitter, they've just completed their 24-hour Red Dead Redemption 2 live stream for the Fair Share charity of Greater Manchester, and they raised a whopping 2,500 Great British pounds for an amazing cause. They streamed, they did everything within Red Dead Online. I saw them doing hog tie tournaments, dancing around a fire. They did a podcast actually around the fireside at one point.
That was cool.
They did hunting. They did the posse crew. They did so much stuff that you could do within Red Dead Redemption. But more importantly, there is an amazing amount of money for a wonderful cause. So you still have time if you'd like to donate a little bit more. Head on over. The link will be either in our description or it'll be over on Stadia Dad Games on Twitter. But just round of applause for those amazing people who took part in that. Go get some sleep, lads and ladies. It's well deserved. Ourselves, we've also lost some sleep, and I certainly have this past week, on account of us three playing Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, one of your pro games for April. We started streaming that on Thursday. We continued that into Friday. We will be picking it up next week. And I mentioned it on the show, Tom, but I actually had nightmares after the first the first stream.
Wow!
And it was a lady who was trying to hunt me down. It was a mix match between Resident Evil and Control, the other video game.
Okay.
So I was in some kind of like corporate office, and I had my own office, and it was very like 70s. Everyone had like shutter blinds between their offices, and this lady kept trying to kill me with a screwdriver. Like specifically in the stomach with a screwdriver. However, it wasn't just any screwdriver; it was a screwdriver with a rat on the end of it.
Okay.
I don't know why, but let's just say, lack of sleep and probably being scared was
That's extremely vivid.
It was. I'm sure there was a lot more to it, but when you're a bit hazy when you wake up and you remember like one specific part, but then the rest of it, even though you know it was a deep, scary dream, I can't actually recall the rest of it. So, and I slept a lot better the second night after playing it. So I don't know whether I just became desensitized to the horror a little bit, or
in one night,
or that me and Richie got the shotgun, so I felt safer going to bed with a mental image of a shotgun as opposed to the lack of
empty
ammo.
Clip of ammo
we had. But
we got a couple of kills in the family members, so maybe it's just less taunting us now.
Yeah, maybe. So we will be continuing that this coming Tuesday, so look out for that, 8 p.m. British Standard Time. This Tuesday we'll be picking up part 3. We'll jump back into the world of Resident Evil and get some spooky scares. Before we jump into the actual show, guys, just what are your quick first takes on Resident Evil? What none of us had played it before, right?
Not 7, no. I really enjoyed the part of the stream I was there for as well. It was hell of a lot of fun to watch somebody else play it. Whether I'd be actually brave enough to sit there and play it, though, is another question. That being said, I have got 8 on pre-order as well, so I'm going to have to jump into that at some point.
Certainly. How about you, Richie?
Pretty much exactly what Tom said. I'm not sure I have the courage to play this on my own. I will be trying to play it on my own. But
thanks for taking one for the team, Chris.
I prefer to watch you. I actually prefer to watch you play it. So I can laugh at you and your nightmares.
Not my nightmares, but again, we've said on the stream, our intention is that when Village comes out, if lockdown rules allow, we'll all get together in a room and actually have some like real life scares and such together. So fingers crossed for that. But do check out the videos, catch up with part 1 and 2. We'll be dropping little short videos this day, tomorrow. In the lead up to our next stream, but do check it out. We had loads of fun and scares, and it was great seeing the community there to support us through our horror. It made a big difference, so go check that one out. Available now on youtube.com/Sounds of Stadia. Big news this week, gentlemen, all about games. It's all about the games here. That's what we're all about. We always say it, it's the best thing to talk about. Don't need politics. Don't need all that crap that's going on out there in the world right now. We're just going to lock ourselves in our rooms and talk about the world of video games. So, Tom, would you do us the honours?
Absolutely, guys. Let's get into the super sexy special Stadia Stories segment, aka The News.
And this week on the news, as I mentioned, it's all about the games. Your pro games specifically. Woohoo! April's pro games got announced last Tuesday. We knew the time of podcast recording, it was going to be that. So anyone who was expecting the pro games last week, we drop on a Monday, pro games announced on a Tuesday. It's sod's law. That's what's going to happen. We knew about one of them, of course. We knew about Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. We found that out the Capcom announcement that happened the week prior. So we knew we were going to get one big AAA title. What we didn't expect, and what we never really expect, is what Stadia are going to do when they reach into their bag and they pull out whatever games Tom's bought in the past few months and apply them to the pro game discount. So let's give a quick breakdown, gentlemen. There's been a bit of a chit chat online. There's a few that I'd like to get a quick take on because Tom, you weren't here for the week of all the JRPG news, and we were relying on you to tell us that about which ones you had or hadn't heard of or played before, because we know that's definitely in your wheelhouse. Yep. So Resident Evil 7 was obviously the big hitting title. We've known about that for some time. It's super crazy that we got it for free. It's definitely the tentpole game of this month's selection, but I've seen so many people on social media jump in and experience this game for the first time. Some people bail straight away, and I probably would if I was playing it on my own too. So that's been great to see. Out of the other 3 titles, we'll probably say one. I don't know if any of us bought it, but we definitely intended to, and then it kind of got lost in the mix a little bit. It was this little complete opposite end of the spectrum to Resident Evil. Was a little title called Piku Niku.
Piku Niku.
It's cute, it's puzzly, and there's something creepy lurking underneath. Now I feel like there's a Resident Evil vibe somewhere lost in that.
Yeah.
But
Piku Niku is actually a secret.
Maybe not as far-fetched from Resident Evil as you think.
It's a 2D version of Resident Evil with bright colours.
All those cute, colourful creatures right there are actually the family.
There could be some weird. This could be the framework they do when they plan out games and movies. This is just the storyboarding of Resident Evil.
Concept art.
What if we made Resident Evil in Microsoft Paint?
Yes. Have either of you checked it out yet?
No.
I have not.
Because this is one I had loads of like interest to play, and then I can't remember what happened around launch. Something else must have like randomly dropped that stopped us from playing. Because we had every intention to do this on a Thursday stream, and then it just never happened. So something must have gone. It might have been FIFA dropped potentially.
Quite possibly
around the same time.
It can happen. We don't have infinite time, unfortunately. So games slip through the fingers.
That is true. That is true. But it is out now, and it's another game from Devolver Digital, who seem to be going quite hard on Stadia right now, because we've got some other stories later on lined up that are also Devolver. We mentioned last week as well a couple of games, so they're definitely all in on Stadia, it would feel, at this moment in time. So check PQ Unique out if you're not already. Fun little puzzler game. Again, very much looks like it's heavily inspired by the Mr. and Mrs. Mr. Men and Little Miss series. Microsoft Paint and Resident Evil clearly inspired.
Also, very close ties to the Resident Evil franchise, Mr. Men.
Yeah,
and the Little Miss.
Mr. Tickle, he'll get you all over the place.
Mr. Tickle created the T virus when he grew up. That's how it all started.
That's what the T's for, tickle. From what I've heard.
It was meant just to make people more ticklish, but then turned them into zombies. He wasn't a very good scientist.
That backfired on it. Well, he wasn't Mr. Scientist, was he? Mr. Tickle. Anyway, let's get away from all that action and throw it over to you, Tom. So we mentioned last week that we were getting Ease 8 Lacrimosa of Dana. No clue what that means. Still don't. We figured that you would have a better insight into this the other week. So now we've got the announcement it's coming as a pro game. Everyone who's got a pro subscription has the ability to actually try this out for the first time. I'm going to check it out. We got some recommendations from some people over at Stadia as well. Tom, do you have any further insight into this? I think Richie, you've played it right as well, so we can get your little first look at that too.
Not only have I played it, it's a first look, and it should be coming out on Wednesday.
Ooh, keep your eyes open for that. Ease 8 is a very interesting title because the Ease franchise has been going on for quite a long time, akin to other big JRPG series like the Final Fantasy franchise. And Dragon Quest, which we've obviously talked about before. Ease has sort of always taken a bit of a backseat, but Ease 8 came out. It's been out a few years now.
It's 2016.
But it was sort of, it was sort of like the like breathing life back into the franchise, really, and it's actually very, very critically acclaimed in terms of the JRPG sort of universe, I suppose. Really, it's an incredible action JRPG as opposed to like a turn-based like your Final Fantasy. It's a bit more akin to, in a roundabout way, more like the remake of Final Fantasy VII in terms of the battle system and so on there. But it's an interesting one for people who've never tried JRPGs before. I'd almost say it might be a good introduction to jumping into a series like that, particularly is the fact that we've got it for as part of Pro, so you've got it completely for free. But if you do enjoy it, expect to spend a long time playing that game because JRPGs are not short. They tend to run a good 60 to 80 hours long. Is probably what I'd say.
On Bravely Default, I have rolled credits on it, and I clocked up just under 70 hours. And I haven't done everything in the game. There's a significant post game. I haven't done the true ending.
I'm with you.
I've done a ending.
But it's one I'd highly recommend for anybody who is interested in trying out JRPGs for the first time. It's got a stunning world. It's got a great set of characters, and the voice acting is actually pretty anime-esque as well in terms of anybody who's watched dubbed anime. You'll know what I'm talking about in terms of the voice acting and so on. But it's pretty good quality. It's not low budget. Great gameplay, brilliant story. Give it a shot. What's not to do? Love.
The one thing I will point out though is if you absolutely must have the best AAA graphics, HDR, all that sort of stuff, it does look like a PS2 game.
Yeah, it does.
It looks like a good PS2 game, but it's one of them. I don't think you should be discouraged by that personally. I don't think it detracts from the game.
Wonderful. It's weird because in the world we live in now, I actually don't think old-looking games, the older they are, they almost get their own art style, like a nostalgic art style to them, where you can actually overlook the rough edges. Like, I mean, look at is it Valheim? Valheim. I think of
Valheim.
Yeah. Like that game is not AAA, but it's selling gangbusters, and people appreciate it for its almost like low res world that you live in, because it's not. That's not at the end of the day. It's gameplay wins through above all else. And you're
the
right.
best analog for the graphics, I'd say, is the enhanced versions of Final Fantasy X. That's where you're looking graphically.
Interesting. So your first look, Richie, goes up on Wednesday. You said?
Yes, it does.
Wonderful. Yep. So if you're interested in the game, you may have claimed it as pro. You want to check that out. Richie's got a first look for you. It's about an hour. It's about an hour long. And put it this way, I was expecting to play this game, then move over to Dragon Quest, and now I'm torn between which one I want to play. Oh, you've made that mistake of teasing yourself with too many things. But you did mention it reminds you of a PS2 game. So final pro game of the month is in fact a PS2 game that was rehydrated from. Actually, ask you to one question: who lives in a pineapple under the sea?
I don't know.
I have no idea what you're talking about, Chris.
I was tempted to sing it for you.
You should have sang it for me.
Who lives in the pineapple under the sea? Copyright claims inbound.
SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom rehydrated also dropped. Surprisingly, I didn't think we'd get this title for some reason. There's this and a couple of others from THQ Nordic, but in my mind I just didn't think it would fit into the pro category because of the price,
you know
I guess.
What it is? It's because this game was Stadia Vaporware for quite a while. I was like, where is it?
Maybe. Well, we've started to see a couple of them pop up recently now. We had, obviously, SpongeBob Destroy All Humans did eventually show up. We had Dirt 5 show up last week. So, in my reckoning, the only one that's kind of missing in action is still that bloody Mafia trilogy. Oh, yeah. It came out last September everywhere else, and it was announced for Stadia, and here we are in April. And yet, like, I've tweeted at the developers, 2K and such, and just the publishers, sorry, and Stadia, and silence. Mum's the word on Mafia, apparently, which is so weird. I actually saw the collection on the PlayStation Store for maybe 20 quid the other day, maybe less. It might have been in one of the spring sales.
So it's already getting discounted on other platforms, and we still haven't got it.
Yeah. But it's just the fact that they stay quiet. Like, again, the shadow drops can be a win or a lose situation depending on how big they are. Like, the Resident Evil stuff was like hype because it came with a great deal.
It's always a lose situation apart from when it is like a Resident Evil.
So, either way, I guess we'll play SpongeBob while we wait for Mafia to sort themselves out. So, Battle for Bikini Bottom. Tom, you've played a little bit of this title.
Yes, I have.
Give us an insight into our good friend SpongeBob and his Patrick Starfish. And
sat down to play some games with my fiance the other day. We were scrolling through the Stadia library. First of all, where's that search bar, guys? Come on. Secondly, I'd also really like to see a filter feature to be able to pick like local multiplayer games. Come on, seriously.
Sponge-related games.
Absolutely. But we eventually settled on jumping into SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom because it's the kind of game that I think we could just sit down and have a bit of fun with. Never played the PS2 version, so I sort of, in my mind, had an idea that we might be able to play like 2-player through the story or so on. The story plays great. Like, the story's a really good sort of simple game. It's very appropriate for children, obviously, with the title character being a children's cartoon character who we all know and can't necessarily say love, but you know, we are aware of the sponge creature. But it's very reminiscent of games like Banjo-Kazooie for me, which is quite a bit of a throwback, where, you know, you've got your collectibles, you've got your levels that you can move between, your little zones, and you've got to collect certain numbers of collectibles in order to be able to access different areas. So it's very progressional in that sort of sense there. However, we obviously wanted to play it multiplayer, and we hit the multiplayer. We jumped in with our characters. I picked Patrick Starfish, and she picked Sandy, the squirrel, and suddenly we were thrown into, with no explanation whatsoever, a large arena with several islands, followed by waves of enemies. No explanation as to what the hell was going on. No story giving us any idea of like why we're fighting these things. There was just a giant robot Squidward and loads of little robots attacking us. And every time we defeated them, we moved to a new island, or there was an extra wave that came. And we thought, okay, we'll just persist with it just for a little bit, just to see if there was some sort of boss fight. Essentially, they might as well have slapped that screen up, because I'm pretty sure we went for a solid hour and a half, and it was just wave after wave after wave. So unless I'm doing something wrong, folks, please do just let me know, because that was not enjoyable in the slightest, I'm afraid.
It sounds very much like a PS2 game where any kind of co-op or multiplayer it's there as a byproduct of the main game, because that's kind of what the games industry was leaning towards. And we saw it in PS3, Xbox 360 generation, where every single player campaign had to have a multiplayer element, whether it was a shooter or a story mode, just because that was the way the industry was leaning. And it's interesting.
So perhaps we've just been spoiled by it.
Maybe, because this is like a remastered version, essentially. It's one of those THQ Nordic properties. They picked it up, they remastered it, and they probably made a lot of money off it, to be fair. It got quite a lot of buzz. It's got that nostalgic kick to it. And I'll hold my hands up. I like SpongeBob. Like, I don't watch it anymore. Because I don't even know what channel. It's still on Nickelodeon, I presume.
I never really watched it as a kid, to be honest.
See, I think it goes on an age thing. So I had a younger sister who...
Yeah,
I'm trying to think. Your younger sister Richie is the same as my brother's age. So I've got like an extra generation under that of like kids' TV has always been on in our house for like an extra 3 or 4 years. And I think as SpongeBob came to his height, it was still on in my household. And I'll be honest, there's a lot of jokes there that are definitely for an older audience that are scattered throughout it. But I like SpongeBob and Patrick and Squidward and Mr. Krabs and Plankton and Sandy and all the characters. So clearly they have some impression on me. And Clancy Brown voices Mr. Krabs. So. Good old Clancy Brown. Looks like a fun platformer. I do actually intend to jump in and check it out. I might even do it on stream just to reminisce a little bit about my Nickelodeon days. And it's nice to see though that we get games like this that take IP in there. I know we've got what, the Ben 10 game coming, and there's also the what was the Zorro
How to Train Your Dragon game as well.
There's the Zorro game as well. So obviously there is IP out there, and the audience is out there for everyone. But dig deeper, maybe, for some better PS2 titles and THQ Nordic, and bring them across. Where's Time Splitters? They own Time Splitters, by the way. I'm still holding out for this Time Splitters remaster trilogy that they keep kind of teasing us with, because that would land itself perfectly to online multiplayer. So, they're your 4 pro games, ladies and gentlemen, for the week. March 31st, at the time of listening, you've missed your chance to claim SteamWorld Dig Quest, SteamWorld Dig 2, Super Hot Mind Control Delete, and Formula 1 2020. Along with Hotline Miami, they've all gone off the pro title. Do you think they'll ever give us a time frame of these pro titles, when and if they, or do you think just do it on the fly?
I think that's something that we don't need, to be honest. Just if you're a Stadia Pro member, every month just claim your games, and that's it.
I mean, some kind of scope for if and when they're leaving. It just seems to be there's no consistency between they drop and they're available for 3 months to claim. It just seems to be pick and choose how long you get for some titles.
I think it's probably just on the individual deals with the publishers. Just how long do we want to keep this up on Pro for? So
interesting. It's an interesting one to watch. There's a couple of other bits and pieces, I think, within the pro game titles, but we're getting quite a good vast library that's fleshing out, and it's nice to see that we are getting the AAA titles, and then traditionally we get a smaller one. So what do we think this month's faring as a summed up total, gentlemen? Tom?
Decent. I mean, in my opinion, this is probably one of the best months for acquiring a AAA game for free. Definitely a month that I would have, had I cancelled my sub for any reason. This is definitely a month where I feel like it's fully justified in order to claim that to come back to at a later stage. The other games, apart from Ease, I'm not really sure, but Ease definitely for me. So at least 2 out of 4 there I'm happy with.
Richie?
I think it's a nice blend between the AAA titles. They're very different. Every single one of them very different games. So that's kind of where I'd like the pro games to be. Like everything from platformers to survival horror to JRPGs to Piku Niku.
There is, of course.
I think it's a very strong showing in the pro games this month.
Yeah, I saw a couple of people say I was thinking about cancelling pro and now I'm back in. And when you think about value for money, in particular, I know the prices are always a bit all over the place, just due to the nature of they're available on all of the digital storefronts, and some have been out a long time, but they are new to Stadia. So I know some of the Ease games have got almost full markup pricing. Same with Resident Evil, but the reality is they're £10-15 on other platforms. So take it with a pinch of salt. I think SpongeBob was around about the £23 mark last week on a sale, and then this month it's now free. So collectively, though, for our £10 a month, we're getting arguably 40, 50 pound worth of gear, and then if you take off the sale price, probably if they put out full RRP, you're probably talking 80 odd quid's worth. So it's a decent showing, and it shows that again that value in the pro subscription is there, and we're getting to the point now. I don't think I want to cancel just in case I'd miss a game.
Yeah,
because I've got how many months worth stacked up now, and if I just miss that 1 month, it's like, oh no.
I'm almost doing the completionist run of them, the pro games, where it's like I just want to get them all because I've had pro since like Stadia launch. I've claimed every single pro game, and I don't want to break that streak.
There's going to be a special trophy in there somewhere, some achievement, isn't there, at some point?
There needs to be. But in terms of like the value in the titles, though, it's interesting what it does for people, because there's a conversation to be had around Xbox Game Pass, and like their plan is to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And there's actually a lot of kind of like uproar over on the PlayStation community side of things, because they just dropped MLB The Show is coming to Game Pass day one, and that game is made by Sony Interactive. It's made and it was exclusive to PlayStation platforms up until this particular game release. So not only is it going over to the Xbox side of things for the first time ever, it's now free day one on Game Pass. Whereas if you have it on PlayStation, who made the damn game, it's like 50, 60 quid.
Yeah.
And then this obviously goes down to like, obviously it's just a business decision. Microsoft go to Sony, we'll give you X amount of money to have it on Game Pass. Sony go, sweet, that's a cool couple of million in the bank. Deal. Done. And everyone now, from a fan perspective, is now uproar about how can a Sony IP be free on a competitor's platform, and it's ridiculous. And that boils for me down to the pro subscription. The pro subscription this month has staved me off actually purchasing Outriders, because I've been enjoying Resident Evil. I've got SpongeBob to try. I've got Piku Niku to check out, and I'm kind of like, well, do I need to drop £50, £60 on a game right now when I've got plenty to play? By the time I get through these 4 games, the new Resident Evil, which I've pre-ordered, is out next month. And then you just get into this world where has the pro subscription desensitized me in a way, if that's the right word, to actually buying more games. And I thought I'll just put that out there to you two gentlemen and think, like, is having these game subscriptions having an impact on your purchasing decisions? Whoever wants to go with that.
I mean, the first thing I was going to say there is it's probably a good idea that you haven't purchased Outriders yet, but we'll get onto that shortly. My thoughts are, I'm at the point now, I think, just in my life in general, where I don't have to have the latest games day one. Like, I don't feel the need to do that. And what I'm getting with Pro at the moment is definitely sort of fulfilling my time in gaming. So I wouldn't really say it's changed my my spending habits, because a lot of the games that I would play prior to this would have been games that I've claimed on PS Plus, previously on PS4, or games that I've picked up on the cheap secondhand anyway. I've never really been one who's been big on buying games day one. That being said, when Stadia first came out, I definitely did buy a lot of games that were released on Stadia, specifically day one, when on Stadia, on the platform, as opposed to, you know, their actual release. But that may have been me playing catch up, I suppose, in a way with some things. But I'm getting enough
games on the platform at the time.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. But there, a lot of the games that we were getting were not like day one in day and date in terms of, like, you know, the whole gaming ecosystem. But I'll be interested to see going forwards with us getting bigger titles, how that's going to change my spending habits, because there's a lot of games that are coming out that have been announced that I am interested in now. We've got one that we're going to talk about shortly on the podcast too, that has already come out, but like there's other titles down the line that I now feel like, should they come to Stadia, yeah, I'll probably get them day and date. But I don't think the Pro Sub so much has had me sort of change the way I've spent my money. I just think that I'm getting a lot of games, like I've said previously, that I've not really thought about before that I'm now enjoying. And I think that's where my spending habit has changed, because it's now I'm now just trying more games as opposed to buying more games. I don't know if that really comes across right.
Yeah, why would you have a full meal when you can just have little tasters of loads of things?
Apparently so. 8 courses of mini little hors d'oeuvres.
That's the Spanish have it right with tapas.
Tapas, that's what it's all about.
That's what it's all
Absolutely.
about. Richie, what do you think?
No, I don't think it has. Tom's covered a lot of the same points that I would. Things like PlayStation Plus. I've had that for years. So, and also I've done the thing where before, with PlayStation especially, where unless the game is like I'm really excited to play, I'm happy to wait 6 months and watch the price half.
Actually, I've got something I do want to add. Sorry, talking about PS Plus, what we haven't touched about is one of my discrepancies that I've got, or one of my sort of gripes I've got with the Game Pass model, because I think the PS Plus model and the Stadia Pro model is great. And I thought like Xbox games with gold is great, but the Game Pass idea of giving you games and then taking them away, I don't like that. I don't like that, because with the Pro model, we can claim the games and we know as long as we continue to subscribe that they're going to be there. But with Game Pass, you're sort of being encouraged to play it then and there, because if you don't, it's gone. Like, you could be several months later and the game is taken away from you, essentially.
Yeah, that kind of is an underspoken part of Game Pass. I've seen a couple of people on social media say, like, actually Game Pass has encouraged them to buy more games, because then after the game leaves Game Pass, they get, I think they get a discount to purchase, like 20% to purchase the game outright. Yeah. Which obviously you'd hope at that time the games came down in price, but you're totally right, Tom. It almost kind of gets you in the door and says, oh, look at this trial. Like, even though it's an extended, you don't have to drop any money on it outside the subscription. But then if you do really buy into that, it is a conscious decision you now need to make 3, 4, 5, 6 months later of, now I need to drop £20 on this game that I've been enjoying, but to keep playing it, even if I have Game Pass still, I now have to fork out actual capital for it. So, yeah, it's very understated. I think people get washed away. I think the FIFA 21, I think, is coming to EA Play in the next couple of weeks. They tweeted out that as well from EA. So that's, again, a game we've probably all paid £20 on Stadia Pro for, but we will always have that title, regardless of what subscription we have. So, again, it's that balancing act. But yeah, it could be down to just spending habits and stuff and particular titles. It's just crazy how the whole gaming landscape is changing and evolving, like, right before our very eyes, and how cloud is playing a big part of that as well. But you mentioned it, Tom. You mentioned it in their regards to titles, because we got another announcement off the back of all like the crazy Pro and Resident Evil stuff. It's been a great it's going to be a great like last month for Stadia as a whole. It's the library we said before. It's a good problem to have, but we're just getting inundated with so much stuff. And we saw something, I think, early last week, which was rated, and it was confirmed on one of the blog posts this week that we are getting Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, from published by 505 Games, who make publish Control. So I'm still holding out, fingers crossed, we're going to get Control at some point this summer. Developed by Artplay. And this essentially, Tom, my understanding of it is it's a spiritual successor to the Castlevania franchise.
Absolutely.
And you are hyped for this one. Do you want to give us a bit of insight into what the hell all this is about?
Yeah, absolutely. So Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is it's a side-scroller Metroidvania game outright. Like, it is purely the definition of what a Metroidvania game is. It so much so that it is the spiritual successor, like you said, of Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which is created by the guy who now runs Artplay. I'm just actually quickly looking for his name right here. I feel terrible for not having this in front of me right now. But while I'm looking for that right here, it came out several years ago. Again, I picked it up on the Nintendo Switch, and the Nintendo Switch port of it was not so good. The console version ran absolutely fine, though, but it's been very much hyped as a game that's sort of like, again, breathing life into this genre that is, it's a classic to the sort of like PS1, PS2, and even some of the handheld series as well, because those sort of Metroidvania side-scrolling Castlevania games also did really well on the Nintendo DS when it first came out too. But it's great if you love all things sort of like JRPG once again, but with a lot of sort of gothic vibes to it, a lot of sort of I mean, I can't go anywhere without saying it's very Castlevania. It is literally, the next Castlevania game, really, because we're not getting anything from that franchise anymore. But it's one I'm super, super excited and really, really looking forward to.
I've just noticed it's got voice actors as well. It's got David Hayden. David Hayden,
yes,
not other than Solid Snake himself.
I've got the name right there. It's the gothic dark fantasy style of Koji Igarashi, celebrated godfather of the Igavania series of games. Egavania.
Yeah. I remember when you said I've been playing it like Castlevania. I remember Psycho Mantis from Metal Gear Solid going, "You've been playing Castlevania," and then I read further down it was David Hayter. I was like, "Oh, that's a full circle of Kojima links up there." But yeah, very excited for this game. Gorgeous kind of 2.5D they kind of call it, where it's that layered foreground background kind of style. And yeah, for the Castlevania franchise, I think there was like a game that came out a couple of years ago that was kind of supposed to be the next one in the series, and it didn't really land that well. And this is actually, like with all indie games now, they kind of just they make such a better take on it. They're kind of similar in a vein to Sonic Mania, where actually the people who make the game and own the franchise don't do it justice, but these smaller developers who are so passionate about that style and game and the heritage and nostalgia that comes with it, they can just put it into better practice. And yeah, Bloodstained looks like a great pickup. But didn't give us a date. They did this weird thing where they announced certain titles, and like half of them get dates, and half of them are just come soon, I guess. Maybe.
Yeah, I think it is a lot of it comes when it's done sort of situation with Stadia.
Yeah, it's so peculiar. But then on the flip side of that, going all the way over the other end of the spectrum, we've got the spiritual successor to, I don't know, Dance Evolution, something like that it might be. We got Floor Kids from Merge Media, coming April 14th, so not too long left. The description is, Floor Kids is a one-of-a-kind breakdancing game featuring a unique trick-style rhythm gameplay. The controls allow you the freedom to play the way you like, with a dynamic scoring system that rewards your moves based on musicality, originality, and style. Build up your crew of boys and girls. I don't know what the hell that means. Unlock new venues as you traverse the city, busting hundreds of different moves and countless combinations on your journey from the corner to the club.
Welcome to the Sounds of Stadia podcast. We are the hippest podcast this side of Google Maps.
Is that a typo, or is that how you say boys? And
no, it's going to be B boys and B girls.
Is it? Is that what? Break dance? What? I don't know. Either way, man. This game
we've lost all street cred.
I don't think we had any anyway.
I don't need street cred. You can't go outside still, so
yeah,
true that.
Okay. Unique characters, locations, 40 different tracks. Hopefully they're copyright free, otherwise it's not going to get streamed by many people. Floor Kids, coming April 14th. Never heard of it, not seen anything about it prior to this. I don't even know if it got a rating on Stadia. It's weird how some games get rated and other games just like creep right under the radar, and then all of a sudden they're just announced by Stadia. It's interesting how some just kind of pop up out of nowhere.
I think it's the games that they hold them close to the chest that the shadow drop. They're the ones who get spoiled by the ratings board because they have to, submit it to the ratings board. But when they actually announce it ahead of time, well, yeah, you control the narrative a bit better. Yeah,
very true, very true. So slightly polarizing game announcements this week, but again, it just goes to show that the library is getting fleshed out with so much variety of titles, and there's something for everyone in there. That cannot be stayed. I'm going to throw this out and guess this isn't in either of your two repertoire.
What are you talking about, Chris?
No.
I'm the hippest b-boy this side of no.
This side of the screen.
I don't think it's for me.
No.
Well, who'd have thought it? Looking at us all, who'd have thought we were down with the Floor Kids?
Yeah.
We're so old. Anyway, moving on from some new gamer titles, we did have a big game drop last week, which, surprisingly enough to me, Outriders from Square Enix, their second crack at the whip of this kind of like online multiplayer thing alongside Avengers, did come out April 1st. No April Fool, although they kind of made a bit of a fool himself with the server issues. Stadia kind of didn't even mention or talk about this. It literally got like 2 lines of sentencing on their entire blog. All the focus was on Resident Evil, the pro games, all the other stuff going on. Piku Niku got more of a write-up than Outriders, which seems a bit odd, considering it's one of arguably the biggest AAA titles to come to the platform. It's gone a bit understated in terms of the launch.
It's arguably the biggest game that's come out this year so far.
Yeah.
It's in the
so far, yeah, certainly has. I'd agree with that one.
And I'm not even just talking on Stadia there. I'm talking all platforms. That's the level this game is pitched at.
Globally. Well, that's kind of what we wanted to talk about. So Outriders is out, and you can jump in and play it now. They have had a lot of teething issues with the servers. I have noticed that it was down, and then I think they had to close down PC and console, and they had to do some maintenance work. I saw them tweeting out. People Can Fly, who are the developers, they've tweeted out a couple of times saying we're switching stuff off, we're working on it. I believe at the time of recording, everything is now okay and stable. I know they turned on, I think, PC first, then console followed shortly after, or vice versa. And the reason being, gentlemen, is because they've had a massive launch, so much so that it's dwarfed Avengers if we go on Steam's numbers to give us an indication. So the looty shooter Outriders has, at launch, had 100,000 concurrent players on Steam, whereas Avengers only had 28,000. Wow. So that's quite a crazy stat to show you the difference. Like, I personally would have thought Avengers would have done bigger numbers. Again, take this with a grain of salt. This is just reflective of Steam. It doesn't indicate, like, maybe more people on console played Avengers. Who really knows? But to get a litmus test check, it's almost shockingly good. Like, it's like four times as much nearly. None of us are playing Outriders, as far as I'm aware.
No, I'm sort of steering clear of it for the meantime because Stadia seems to be having a weird sort of issue with Outriders at the moment. The fact that the game had some performance issues on launch as well, which were quite quickly patched out. However, Stadia is still running on, as far as I'm aware, it may have changed by the time that we release this episode, but it's still running on the 1.0 or the 1000 version patch, as it's called, which is the basic. Essentially, it's the same build as the demo.
Which we didn't get.
Which we didn't get, but it's the same performance version. It's just the full game running on that performance level, really, which has been one of the big things. And another thing was that I think the launch on Stadia was scheduled to be at a specific time, and it also came a little bit later than planned as well. Disappeared from the store altogether for a while too, which was strange. So I'm going to watch it with bated breath and see, and hopefully see that things pick up and see that the performance gets improved and so on before I actually get into playing it. I never really pre-ordered it, so again, I'm waiting for the bugs to be ironed out first, get the stability down before I try it.
It's an interesting one in general because they've had to do things like they switched off crossplay. And that was disconnected this last weekend because I'd imagine that's a whole other realm of connecting wires from different companies and servers and such. But you're right, Tom. The game disappeared from the storefront on the day, and then I saw Stadia put in the Reddit threads that they hadn't pulled the switch fully on releasing the game. So we had this whole global map of releases when Stadia was going to get it, and it was 5 p.m. British Standard Time, and it didn't come until like an hour or so later. In regards to the pre-orders disappearing from the store, the same thing happened with Cyberpunk, as far as I'm aware. Now, my take on this not just because you can no longer pre-order it because it launches today? So they have almost like that tiny little cut-off window where actually you've had 3 months to pre-order this game. It comes out today at a specific time. So this fractional time window we've got here, pre-orders aren't available because you've left it too late to pre-order because it comes out today. Do we think that's the reason, or is that just me thinking?
Potentially.
Yeah, just a little bit of inefficiency in the way they update the store listings.
Yeah, because like in theory, the game in an ideal world should be out bang on midnight, right? So pre-orders should stop at midnight because the game, according to the system and the algorithm, whatever they use, the Stadia system probably thinks the game's out come midnight, right? So maybe pre-orders are set to the clock to stop being accepted at the stroke of midnight. Which would make more sense, rather. And again, in my opinion, all of them should be dropping at midnight. I hate the fact that we have no downloads and no updates, yet I have to wait till 5 p.m. in the goddamn afternoon to play. I saw a couple of people tweet out saying, I've got the day off work, please don't make me wait till late afternoon. Because I don't know about you guys, but come that time of day, if you're off, that's when you start like planning your afternoon meal, you see your other halves, you have plans, you don't. Whereas if you're off, you want to dig into a first thing, right?
It's a weird choice Stadia has made. It's kind of almost diluting one of the biggest selling points where it's like, you don't have to wait in line in the store to get it. You don't have to download a massive day one patch and install the game. You can just click and play. But when you're waiting literally 17 hours after other consoles get it, then you kind of that time you've just squandered that time.
Yeah, even with some of the worst internet connections, you could download the whole game in 12, 14, 15 hours, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But all that aside, though, the game seems to be doing really well. I'm quite happy for it because hopefully, I mean, there would have been a scenario where Outriders does bad, Avengers has done bad, and then Square Enix just go, you know what? When this whole multiplayer online thing, we're out. We're not going to try and reinvest in this so much. But I think the success of Outriders could actually, in turn, help Avengers, and they could learn from each other and share the kind of stats behind the scenes.
With Outriders, they seem to have built a better game than Avengers, like from the core concept of what it is.
I mean, looter shooters lend themselves a little bit better to that kind of thing anyway.
Yeah.
Very true. However, there is like a little kind of caveat to that as well. Did you see when the servers were down, you can't play the game offline?
Yes, I did see that. A lot of people were complaining on Twitter and saying that they couldn't even jump into the single player stuff, like offline, like you say, without it. You need to have that online connection to be even able to play single player. That's
isn't that the same with things like Destiny and Division and pretty much every game? It's a consistent online game. Like that's
it is.
But this goes back to the irony of when people shit all over Stadia and say, "Oh well, what about internet connection?" In 2021, most big title games, as long as they're not exclusively single player, require an internet connection. And I listened to a couple of podcasts this past week, and they did the same thing where they said again about why would you think about cloud gaming? Like, I don't want a day when my internet goes down and I guess I'm just not playing games today. And my counter argument to that, and I actually messaged into the show, so we'll see if anything comes of it. But my counter argument to that is everyone says this about internet connection. In the last year, where lockdowns happened, and every country's infrastructure for internet has been at its utmost hard strained, I'd argue my internet's been out for a couple of hours at best. In 365 days, a couple of hours at best.
Since I upgraded my router, I've had zero internet issues. Like, none. And
I know we're kind of benefit, like the internet structure in the UK is terrible in some ways, but it's good in others. But reality is, people using this as like as a weapon to put Stadia down. It's so flawed because we live in 2021 where the internet is everywhere.
Such a dated argument.
Yeah, it's like saying I'm not going to get a mobile phone in case the signal cuts out. Like, come on, like you get for 99.9% of your day you have internet, and 99.9% of your life every year on year, you have internet. Yes, there might be outages, but let's face it.
And you know what? If there is an outage, read a book.
Yeah, you've got something better. But then here's the thing, Richie. So my other kind of counterpoint to that is that we've also got cellular data. If my broadband Wi-Fi went down, I've got 4G and 5G, which is only getting better every day on day. The networks invest millions and millions in making these networks bigger and better. I could just... This is the great thing with Stadia. Couldn't do it with my PlayStation. My PlayStation goes offline. I ain't playing anything. With Stadia, I just pick up my phone, crack on.
I mean, you could tether your PlayStation to your phone.
I could, Richie, but I'd just go read a book if I wanted to do that,
You're
right?
looking at having an unlimited data plan. See, I wouldn't do that because I don't have an unlimited data plan and it would just burn through my data.
But if you're one of the people who doesn't want to read a book and you want to play games, fuck your data plan. I'm jumping in. I want to play Outriders right now, baby. But and I heard those topical points and it was like, we are getting to that point where we have huge titles like Resident Evil, Outriders, we've got Avengers, we've got Cyberpunk, we've got Valhalla, we're getting all the little indie titles now coming through as well, Bloodstained, Ritual Night, and it's kind of just like, I feel like the argument's just crumbling more and more as time passes.
I've just thought of something. People don't use that same stick to beat Netflix with. It's the same argument if you watch TV. It's like, I'm not going to watch Netflix just in case my internet goes out because then I can't watch it. I'm only going to buy Blu-rays. Like, no, people don't do that.
Yeah. I feel like I've seen more online of people complaining when Disney Plus goes down at midnight in the States because everyone's trying to watch Winter Soldier and Falcon Winter Soldier. Yeah. And when everyone tries to watch it bang on midnight, like Disney Plus's servers almost have a crash. That happens more regular than my internet going down.
It's true.
What a world we live in. But yeah, I don't even know where that rant came from. But
yeah, we're in a bit off.
I can't remember why we got
there.
to it. But either way, new games coming to Stadia. Enjoy them, and yeah, you've got no excuses to play because you can play anywhere, anytime. And that's the kind of new game announcements we got. We did get, speaking of games, we said this week's episode is just flush to the core with games. We got a bunch of titles dropping that came out. Some of them which we saw rated, and they were shadow dropped this week. The first one up was Komono Heroes, dropped on Stadia. We'll just give them a quick rundown. Actually, where's my list? Where is my list gone? We got Komono Heroes, Cosmic Star Heroine, Killer Queen Black, which we are actually looking to do a live stream on for all three of us because it's a super fun party game. We've reached out to the devs about how we can best work with them to showcase their game to its full potential. Komono Heroes, Cosmic Star Heroine, Killer Queen Black, Trine 4. Tom, you weren't here when I think this one dropped. Have you got any insight into Trine 4? Is it your type of game?
No, I was here for that episode when we talked about Trine 4. Not when it dropped. I think it's when it got announced for it. Because I think it's only just dropped as of quite recently.
Every peculiar game, I always just presume you know way more about it than I ever would.
No, I think that we covered that 2 episodes ago.
Right then, so we got that, and Disco Elysium dropped as well. So breaking them down, Komono Heroes. This is fitting into that wheelhouse of that vibe of Monster Boy and Kaze, that kind of 2D Mario-esque inspired kind of world. Either you picking this game up?
No. It's something that I would try if I really had nothing else to play, but this is the kind of game that I would expect to see go pro. And I was going to say this earlier, but recently, obviously, there's been a bit of a joke in the past about, games that Tom buys usually go pro. More recently, it's been games that I've been considering buying, like Ys 8.
So Stadia got ahead of you now.
The Stadia now ahead of the game, so I'm sort of expecting Bloodstained to go pro at some point.
It's all that Google data they use, and then now can predict what games you would have bought.
To be fair, the amount of Google tech I've got in my house, I wouldn't be surprised if they're listening to me talking about what games I'm considering buying.
A lot of Google tech I have in this room.
It's just like Google's like Minority Report now. They can predict the game before it's happened.
Yeah.
Komono Heroes though it's very reminiscent of like an old side-scrolling arcade game, like that I'd actually expect to be sitting there with like the joystick and the buttons to be playing in a pub on a Saturday, which is what I used to do as a kid growing up. It's an interesting title, but again, I don't really see myself buying it amongst everything else.
I watched the trailer and I thought it looks fun, but I feel like Kaze is a much more polished version of it almost. Like, I know it's an older game and Kaz is brand new, but there's just something about it just looks cleaner and sharper. And while we're talking about it, I guess, Tom, you've recorded a first look for the channel, which is going to go up at some point next week for Kaze, because we were hyped for that. What are your first impressions? Because I've not picked it up. I was hyped for it, but then when it dropped, me and Richie discussed it last week, but the price being more expensive than PlayStation and Xbox and Steam and such, and then all the other stuff and Resident Evil dropping, I'm just holding off for now, thinking it will see a price drop in the near future. Again, patience is key, ladies and gentlemen. But you have played it, and is it worth the £30? And did you enjoy your first hour or so?
Is it worth it? I'm trying to remember how much I bought Sonic Mania for when it first came out, because it is very akin to a Sonic Mania level game in terms of the overall amount that you get for your money's worth. It is a fun game. It is really, really fun, and it's one that I could have seen myself actually sitting down, and with more time, I would have even thought about making it a little like Saturday morning cartoon type series to bring back as like a nostalgia. But I want to play more of it. However, I would say hold off for a sale, because I think the only thing that was holding me back with it is because it's a new IP. It doesn't have that sort of like, it doesn't fully hit you in the nostalgia spot because it doesn't have that like titular character that
we
like already know.
Into Sonic Mania, where this is what I've wanted.
Exactly.
It's like coming home.
it's trying to be that, but it's trying to create its own IP in an area where it has such a really well built up history already. That being said, though, it does have some pretty original ideas that we've not seen in games like Sonic before, and I think that's where its strengths really lie. So look forward to getting my first opinions on that when that video comes out later this week as well.
Yeah, it's designed to have like actual levels, isn't it? Like worlds, almost like very akin to like Super Mario days and Sonic and stuff.
It is very much a mix of old games that you will be very nostalgic for.
Yeah, I watched some of our friend John Scar, who does a lot of. He did actually a full playthrough of the game prior to launch, and there's a couple of things I saw in there which was like, oh, that looks good. Those boss fights, some of the bosses are very reminiscent of Cuphead as well, where it's like vegetables came to life, and it was like, oh, there's a giant aubergine trying to kill me, but with a lovely 80s 90s vibe to it as well. So yeah, it's great recommendation, and I think £30. A little bit too steep at this moment in time, so hold off out there if you can do so. So back to our list of games then. We spoke at length about Disco Elysium. I saw the final cut. Sorry, amazing plaudits. It's been re-reviewed across a couple of gaming websites, and they've given it like 10 out of 10s, 9 out of 10s and stuff. And some places. It actually didn't get rated in Australia. Did you guys see this for some reason?
No.
It didn't pass certification in Australia. There's something to do with, I think there's part of the storylines on about like women and men doing something that's a bit like maybe oddly choice for script, but it didn't pass. I mean, Australia notoriously is quite strict around the ratings board. There's a couple of games, I think a couple of Grand Theft Autos aren't out there, and Bully and other titles, pretty much all Rockstar games, don't get released over there because they've got that extra scrutiny on it for their ratings board. But great plaudits for Disco Elysium, and it's still one that it's on my radar. And I'm more like morbidly curious about it now. But again, that dropped that quite morbidly, because there's a lot of death. It's like he's a detective or something, and the price just still there's something about I'm not just skint, maybe I just don't have money, and I'm more like,
it's one for me. If it came out in February, I probably would have bought it because February was quite barren in games. Like that would have been the perfect time for it to drop in stages, like when I had the time to play it. But other games have really just took my focus away from it.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I could see it being one of the big pro titles in the future. There's like a bigger like a tentpole one, but interesting. Stadia. But I think out of all of the ones that came out this week, the one that's got my most interest, because it's got the best arguable price as well, is probably Killer Queen.
Yes.
Black. Yeah. So we said we've reached out to the devs about doing some kind of, just because I think it's one that doesn't take much effort to jump in and enjoy. We're basically going to say hello to everyone, join us in the chat, let's have a fight, giant snails, giant wasp creatures, and we'll just fight it out with swords to some awesome music and have some.
It's a game that's almost made for first night streams.
Yep. Yes. It pretty much is, and it's available now, and I've seen a couple of people have loads of fun with it, and the devs have been fantastic with just engaging with the community, sharing stuff. I know, again, Lee, our good friend Stadia Dad, he did a stream where the devs were involved in the chat and stuff, and it just seems like they're happy, they're proud of the game, and they're happy to share it with everyone, because it's been out a while on other platforms. So keep your eyes on the channel, keep your eyes on our Twitter feed for ones like that. Our final game of the week, gentlemen, was actually, no, Trials of Cold Steel is out.
Yep. Trials of Cold Steel 3 is out.
This is where I get confused with my JRPGs. You have played it, Richie?
I haven't played it, I've bought it.
You bought it, right, okay.
I'm going to jump in this afternoon.
Right, so you haven't played it yet?
Haven't played it yet.
Right, okay. Because this is the one with guns instead of just swords and stuff, from what I remember. Yeah. So, another one. Tom, any more insight into Trials of Cold... the Legend of Heroes Trials of Cold Steel 3?
Trials of Cold Steel 3 is the third in the franchise, as you can tell by the name of it. One thing I would say is...
With JRPGs, that doesn't necessarily ring true.
No. But what I would say is, if you are interested in this huge wave of JRPGs that we're being hit with at the moment, again, I would recommend Ys 8 over this it's very difficult to say over Dragon Quest as well, because Dragon Quest is such a good game. But this game does have a lot of links to previous titles in the series as well. So you might find yourself sort of struggling to understand what the hell is going on.
I believe this is a recap, though, built into
It's
the game.
Recap. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's pretty useful to know, because particularly with... there's a weird thing about JRPGs where, as you say, Chris, on the one hand, the number could mean absolutely nothing. Look at Final Fantasy. But on the other hand, there are some titles...
10-2.
Yeah, but on the other hand, there are some JRPG titles where it does literally move from one to the next in sort of like sequential order. And this just happens to be one of them. But that being said, once again, an incredibly well-rated JRPG. So I can't fault the fact that we're getting these games, and I'm pretty sure we're also expecting to get the next in the series as well. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, the thing for me is I wouldn't, with this being the third in the series, I wouldn't let it put you off buying it if you're really interested in the game, because I guarantee a quick Google search, you'll find some plot summaries of 1 and 2.
Yes, that is very true.
Yeah, I've done it with a few games where you just go on YouTube and go 5-minute summary, and some amazing content creator out there has done some kind of recap just to fill you in. I do that every time.
I'll do it for games I've played, but when the sequel comes out, something like say 5 years later, if I don't have time to replay it, I'll watch a plot summary.
Yeah, chances are I'll probably forget what happened in Final Fantasy VII Remake by the time the next part comes out.
Probably you and the rest of them. And then the final game, which was rated a few months ago, we got a date for through a press release. Legend of Keepers from Goblin Studios is coming April 29th. So not to be confused with Legend of Heroes, this is Legend of the Keepers, slightly different style game. It's essentially, we mentioned it we probably mentioned it a few weeks back when it was actually rated. And it's kind of like a dungeon crawler, if I recall.
It's a reverse dungeon crawler. And what I mean by that is the fact that you are playing as the dungeon keeper, the throwback to a really old series of games that I absolutely loved.
Oh, same. Dungeon Keeper 2.
Legend Keepers is very much a game where you are set out to try to stop adventurers from being able to conquer your dungeons. So you're playing the sort of bad guy in a way there, where you're sort of like trying to destroy them in any way possible by building up your dungeons. And I think it's through like hiring or playing as the enemies rather than the heroes instead. It's got great reviews on Steam Early Access as well already. It's got a load of players. I am probably going to get this game. This is something that I am very much looking forward to.
I think Richie might as well. Just judging by, as soon as you said that, the Legend of whatever the other one was called, I forgot already.
Dungeon Keeper.
Dungeon Keeper. That's it.
Well, it's a very different game to Dungeon Keeper is more of a strategy.
Yeah. And this is very much like dungeon management.
I actually think you'd enjoy Dungeon Keeper, Chris.
Yeah,
I probably would enjoy it. I enjoy most games. It's just the time. That's the thing. That really is the thing. But funny you should say a different type of game, Richie, because our final story of the week comes from CD Projekt Red, who put out a statement around the kind of the plans going forward, because they've had a bit of a tough time. Have CD Projekt through no fault of their own. Partially through their own problems.
From Karen in accounting.
Yeah, of course. Damn. But yeah, the reality is they've obviously been screwed over by hacks and leaks and stuff, and then the whole game not working on most platforms. It still isn't out on the PlayStation 4 digital storefront. 3 months, over 100 days I think now have passed on that, which is crazy. They put out a patch last week, which we didn't really cover on the show because it literally is just a long... It shows you how buggy that game was. That the patch list was about 20 pages of just bullet points of this mission fixed, this side quest, this item, this glitch bug, and it just went on and on. So we didn't even cover it last week because it would have just been us rattling off a list of 100 things and more.
There's an entire show and just going through that patch list.
Oh, definitely. But they have came out this week and said that they're reorganising to look at developing multiple AAA projects at the same time. So no doubt through Cyberpunk development, the studio's expanded, they've recruited more people. and now the game's out, they're now probably, I'd imagine with everything that's happened, they're looking at probably a bit of an internal restructure from the top down. I'm surprised the CEO or the chairman is even still around, because after everything that happened last time, I'd imagine there's got to be some questions asked of the board and everything that's going on, because it's let's face it, this, if they delayed that game to this year, just think of how good 2021 could have been for this title if they'd have left it, sorted it out everywhere. Like, there's no, like, everything's been pushed back. All the big Warner Brothers games have been knocked back to next year. They would have had Far Cry and Resident Evil to contend with for like Game of the Year. Well, depending on what exclusives get put out as well, but alas, they didn't. So they've came out and said, just in a corporate video update, as they do, we want to improve the way we make games. We want to continuously improve the working environment for every team member. We want a sharper focus on how we work together to make great games. The word crunch is not mentioned within the video at any point. We should point out as well, because leading up to the Cyberpunk launch, I think their staff were forced. They were forced, but they got paid to work like 6 days a week, if I recall, leading up to the launch to get it finalised.
It's something CG Projekt. What made it worse for CG Projekt Red was they've been a company that's been very forward thinking in the way they've approached the building of their games and stuff in the past. And then they fell for the trap of resorting to crunch, which is something that they said they'd never do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they're looking at cross-functional teams will work on multiple projects for different IPs at the same time, with a dual development plan to start in 2022. They've also thrown kind of a bit of shadow on what the difference for the games means, because there was a multiplayer scope planned for CD Projekt Red, and I don't know whether their intention is to keep those things going as separate entities or blend them in, because the roadmap update they've gave is Cyberpunk's getting patches and updates, free DLC, and the next gen update, because let's remember the PS5 and Series X versions are not a thing yet. The Witcher, there's the TV series, I think, just finished wrapping this week. Not that it's that in line with the game, but it helps boost it. Further development of Gwent, The Witcher Monster Slayer, which I think is their animated series, if I'm not mistaken.
It's the mobile game, I think, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Might be one of them, yeah. And then the next gen update, because again, they said they're going to bring it across, which is the secret project, which was hacked, which I think we're all hoping that means there's a Stadia port in there somewhere.
Oh God, I hope so.
Fingers crossed, that would be awesome.
Does that mean I have to play it again?
Yes, it does, Richie. Yes, it does.
On stream as well.
No, do I get to play it again?
Yes. on stream, you'd be the best candidate for that. Yeah. But in terms,
I put the t-shirt on before I saw the news, so that's fine.
That's fine. So in terms of them splitting the franchise, do we think this just means that just one is going to work Cyberpunk, one is going to work Witcher indefinitely? Like, they're the two IPs. Do you think they'd risk branching out to another IP after Cyberpunk's start?
No, I think it's very much going to be sort of like split workforce on everything. I think the other thing worth mentioning as well is that CD Projekt have just recently acquired a Vancouver-based studio, which they worked alongside to develop Cyberpunk 2077. So they've now got CD Projekt Vancouver as well, which I think will be predominantly focused on the Cyberpunk side of things, so that the Warsaw, the Krakow offices can just focus back on, I guess, where their successes lie, really. If we look like more at CD Projekt as a whole, really, The Witcher has always been like super strong for them since the get-go, particularly with 3. So it makes sense that they sort of want to, split everything and focus like that.
It's almost like they've break glass. In the case of
learned a lot from Cyberpunk as well, that how to launching a new franchise from the ground up is probably a lot harder than they realised.
Yeah.
Because bear in mind, The Witcher is based on a series of novels, so the world and the characters were already fleshed out. So there's that side of it didn't necessarily need to be done. Very true, very true.
I was talking to our friend Luke, who's one of the writers over at Stadia Source, and he was saying he's put many hours. He's finished practically everything bar a few side quests. He needs to go back and reload a previous save or something to complete. And he said that's the problem with the world, is he feels like the scope got away from them. And then even if they had released it like with a delayed time frame, there's still a lot of aspects of that game that need kind of more depth added to them. And I think that's the kind of vibe got. There was a beautiful world, and the characters were great, but there was so much stuff that just kind of felt unfinished. And like I'm just done with it, really.
I'm sort of really quite glad in a strange way that I've not actually really delved too much into the game then on that basis, because what I might do at the moment is very similar to how Richie and I are also approaching Baldur's Gate 3, is rather than diving in and playing through the early access for Baldur's Gate 3, we've obviously put it on the side so we can experience it when everything else is released.
Yeah.
Maybe with Cyberpunk, whilst I've missed the initial hype train and complaint train and whatever you want to call it, train being derailed by bugs, with the free DLCs that come out and with the the quality of life updates fixing the bugs and so on, maybe it will be in a more stable, more wholesome experience overall when I eventually do get around to play it, because I still fully intend to. It's just a question of, once again, like everything else, when, really.
Gwen.
Gwent.
Do I play this game?
It's such a weird one because obviously The Witcher has such a good like kind of backtail of success, and no doubt they've got Cyberpunk. Like they've made it as such a brand that's so recognizable now with that like bright yellow. If they do support it, it could have like a No Man's Sky thing where they just keep adding the free DLC, the story, they work on it, and they garner this kind of good praise that they undone so quickly back in November.
They shot themselves in the foot with it. They should have just waited till the game was ready.
Yeah,
and it's clearly not ready for PS4 yet.
Yeah, and then there's PS5 as well as a whole other thing, and it's all a lot of stuff to talk about. But I think they do have that break glass in case of emergency, because let's face it, as soon as they announce a Witcher 4, everyone's going to be hyped up and forget all the atrocities that happened with Cyberpunk in the drop of a hat. And they'll buy it.
And also nobody cares about if Roach ends up on a roof again.
Yeah, and again, they'll sell. I mean, they made that much money from Cyberpunk, even with its flaws. Like, that company's set for a good while for any future project. So they've got the cash to correct it. That's there. It's not like back to Square Enix with Avengers, where they haven't made any profit on that game yet. Cyberpunk was like flush with millions 24 hours after launch, regardless of how buggy the game was.
It's reputation damage, I think, is going to be the case for them, rather than financial.
True.
Because it sold well, they made a lot of money, but their next big game, whether it's Cyberpunk 2 or Witcher 4, how many people are pre-ordering it?
Yeah, very good point. But final story of the week, little discussional point we'll wrap up on for this week's episode, gentlemen. Speaking of shooting yourself in the foot, Sony, it was leaked on Twitter, I think, about a fortnight ago, and it was confirmed by Sony this past week that they are closing down their digital storefronts for new purchases of PlayStation 3, PSP, and the mighty PlayStation Vita. And this kind of leads me into wrapping this up with just a conversation about game preservation, gentlemen. So, PlayStation 3, I haven't touched mine in a good while. Now I've got my PS5, it's kind of took that extra step down. It was up in the bedroom for Blu-rays and DVDs and the odd thing. And then now the PS5's in the living room, the PS4's moved upstairs, and that's kind of the point. So now it's just in a bag. Bless it. Just waiting.
It's not even in a box, it's just a bag.
It's in
Tesco carry bag
no. It's in a proper carry bag case with the controllers and things. If I needed to take it somewhere on a walk somewhere, it's ready to go at the drop of a hat.
You take your PlayStation
it's so
for a
old.
walk.
It's so old at this point. It's not even in a reusable bag for life or anything. It's in one of those old Tesco plastic carriers.
It's so old it wasn't worth investing in a bag for life.
It's in a casket. It's in a casket, bag for death. But it's a shame, because this is kind of the first generation that we've seen that has required like online play, and it has digital storefronts like PlayStation 3, Xbox Live, and Games with Gold. So that all came about with that generation. And the PSP, I haven't touched in absolute years. The Vita, I play quite regular. I just finished a game on it recently. However, with these digital storefronts going away, they have clarified that if you've already bought the games, you can still download them, but they're basically cutting off new purchases.
Okay.
And that means there are a lot of games that were digital only, and you will no longer be able to buy anywhere. They never did physical versions of them, because the great thing with digital storefronts is it allows indie developers who maybe couldn't go through the cost of production actually put games out. And lo and behold, now these games just do not exist. You can't play them anywhere. They're not emulated because they were made on consoles, so there's no PC version of them. And it's kind of, it's just a little bit of a sad thing to see these things set sail off into the ether. And that made me think about Stadia, and how, because Stadia is the platform, there's no generational leaps. It's just the games are here from day one all the way through on all devices. It's built with the future in mind. how Sony's kind of dropping the ball a little bit with game preservation. And like, yes, you may be able to buy physical titles, but they're going to be very hard to come by, and their price and value is probably going to skyrocket. Now you literally cannot buy them online, so you're going to get not scalpers, but and just like all of a sudden, because like Mario, for example, on Nintendo, the price of those All-Star collections are going to go through the roof. Now you can't actually buy one on the main high street. It just makes me think Stadia is it's setting a good precedence for going forward with game preservation. Any game on Stadia, whether it was day one or 10 years from now, it will still be playable and it will still run the day it was intended to. So I just wonder, though, how you guys feel about digital storefronts closing, and should Sony be supporting this longer, or is there a cut-off point where they have to say goodbye?
I think ultimately they as much as I hate it, because I want to preserve all the games, but I think there has to be a cut-off point at some point for these stores. We are talking about 2-generation-old hardware now, and that'll be costing Sony money to keep up and running, and they'll probably want to reuse the servers and things for other stuff. For me, the fact that you can still download your games, I think, is a bit of a saving grace there. But even that might eventually go.
Well, that's it. It's good for now, but they could easily turn around in another 2 years and say, that has to go too, because that also costs us money. And I know a big part of this was probably they have to do a lot with finances behind the scenes as well. Like, think about your small indie developer who's putting out a game. Something has to happen with, like, they get paid, someone has to arrange, like, the dividends and how the cost gets shared for what might be 5 purchases a year of whatever title it might be.
I prefer the way Microsoft have done it, actually, because you can play the Xbox Series X is compatible all the way back to the original Xbox.
Correct.
So any game you've ever bought on the Microsoft console, you're fine.
Was it any, or is there still I thought it was still a collated list. I think there was still a couple, wasn't there?
Is it?
I think that's their intention, but I think there's a couple that need like tweaking a little bit to make them work properly. But essentially, that is the goal, which is huge for Microsoft. It's such a good thing.
You never know. Sony might be pulling a blinder here. They might be merging the PS3 store into the... Get rid of a PlayStation 3 store, PlayStation 4 store, PlayStation 5 store, and just make it the PlayStation store.
Well, that was exactly going to be my point. It seems so far-fetched to me that they haven't already done that, because it just seems like, why sack it all off when you've got something that could arguably be brought to the new gen console, and then look to try to support that in some sort of fashion? Because at the end of the day, like, the argument that I would bring to the forefront is, you don't buy a 4K TV just to then only watch 4K films. You wouldn't then go back and watch, like, I'm not going to watch Star Wars, like a New Hope or something, because it won't fulfill the 4K quality of the TV. Like, that's a redundant argument. Like, you should be able to take everything from all of that data, everything that's been created digitally and so on, should quite easily be movable to another server to then be supported on updated hardware. It seems so strange to me that it isn't already. That's what I find odd.
There are a couple of unique titles as well, which ironically, because the Vita had PlayStation 1 games you could buy. PS3 you could buy PlayStation 1 games, but PS4 and 5 sequentially don't have that feature. So now you've also not only lost the opportunity to buy all these older titles and digital-only games, but classic games that were available on PlayStation. Well, I'm talking like the PlayStation 1 Hercules game, Crash Bandicoot, the original Medieval. You could play them on the Vita and the PS3 by just buying them digitally. That doesn't exist going forward, so it's crazy.
It begs another question then. It begs whether Sony have got something quite, like, against emulation in a way, really, because in a way, like, they've got the previous devices have been allowed to emulate, because it's obviously not going to be playing the PS1 version of a game. It's going to be an emulated version of that PS1 game, because it's obviously not playing on the original hardware it was designed for. But surely at this point we should realistically be looking at this backwards compatibility in some way, or at least from an emulation perspective, because there's a lot of games that we look back as gamers and say that this is a classic. This is a game I thoroughly enjoyed and I would play it again and again and again. The amount of times I've bought Final Fantasy games again and again and again on different platforms, even though I've already beaten them on 2 or 3 platforms already, like, surely they want to still guarantee themselves those sales too. Like, surely they want to.
I think it largely probably comes down with Sony is how much money do they expect to make it, especially more than niche games, against how much effort it would be to get it across.
All right. Name me a PlayStation 1 game or a PlayStation 2 game that you loved as a kid that you would love to replay again now on PS5.
Rayman.
Okay, classic Rayman in its exact format. No HD remaster or any of that bullshit. Just classic Rayman as it is on the console. That it's stuff like that. Like that. If they had the right price point for it, let's say that they do like the what is it? I mean, I could go to my shelf right now and I could grab one of the PlayStation 1 games. In fact, I'm going to do it right now.
You do that.
Oh, he's doing it, guys. He's doing it.
He's braving it. Has he done it?
He's got it. He's got
Time
time crisis.
I haven't got a light gun, but it's Time Crisis.
Wow.
If you could get, let's say, for argument's sake, Time Crisis, but you could pick it up at a nice $4.99 or something like that, and then play it again on your PS5. It's that sort of argument to me that they should go back through their vintage catalog and digitize all of those games anyway.
Yeah. And just put them on the store, or put them on like a PS Now style streaming service, so you can just you can. Here's all the PS1 games, the entire catalog for X amount a month.
At this point, it was platinum already. It was already platinum, and that's in a PlayStation box. Like, okay, yeah, you've made the money from the game a lot over, but it's games like this that, like, I've still got it on my shelf. I've got WWF SmackDown 2. I've got Medieval 2. I've got, like...
Damn it, Sony. Tom wants to play Time Crisis.
There you go, The Grinch. Granted, The Grinch didn't go platinum, but...
It didn't. By Konami, by the way. Yeah. The Grinch was by Konami. But in a nutshell, though, I think the great thing we've always said about Stadia is it's the accessibility, that the titles and the games are just there. Like, you don't need different software. You don't need to purchase a new box every several years. You don't need a certain amount of hardware that's capable of running these games. They just basically are there. They exist, and you can play them if and when, now several years later. And that's what we got. Tom's now obsessed with, like, I'm going to rig up.
No, it's the fact that you mentioned. It's the fact that you mentioned you don't need certain kinds of hardware, and I'm here looking at the manual about how to install a light gun.
A light gun. That would do it. But game preservation, I think, is very, very important. I would love to see Stadia kind of like be able to reach out to some of these. Not like PlayStation 1 games and stuff, but as we creep forward, games that like we've got a lot coming to the platform. A lot of these JRPGs and stuff are older titles that we're now getting, and it's great to see that once they're on Stadia and they exist there, 5, 6, 7, 8 years from now, we can basically hopefully search for it in the search bar. Find the game, and maybe there's even like a tabulated form where there's just a whole area for nostalgic titles. We saw recently with like Lion King and Aladdin got a remake, essentially just put together and released on PS4. So the scope is there for it. I just think it's a shame. Obviously, Richie, costing and stuff, it's a total thing that's going to happen eventually. These businesses don't owe anyone anything to keep them running in perpetuity, unless, whereas with Stadia, it's their business model. So they have to run in perpetuity, otherwise, hello Google graveyard, and then we're all out of a job. So we'll pick up with that, no doubt, further down the line. We may even look at this as a SideQuest topic, Richie, because it's clearly something we could explore.
Yeah, there's
a
bigger discussion in here.
But we'll leave it there for episode 80 of the Sounds of Stadia podcast. If you've liked what you've seen or you've liked what we've discussed, by all means, click like down below, subscribe to the channel, and click that notification bell so you're kept in the loop with all things Sounds of Stadia, like our live streams that we do every Thursday with the lovely Stadia community out there. This week we'll be picking up potentially with either Killer Queen Black or more Resident Evil, depending on how the week vibes out. Check out that. Richie, what's our SideQuest mission for the week?
Well, this week we're talking about these things. Controllers.
What have you got, Tom? 2 cup holders?
2 cup holders. Yeah. Quite good for holding my hands.
We're going to be discussing all the controllers of yesteryear and how the Stadia controller ranks up against them. So if you're interested in that, check that out. It goes on free feeds, youtube.com/Sounds of Stadia every Friday. But if you do want to get that content earlier, Patreon.com/Sounds of Stadia. From as little as $1.79, you can support the channel and us three gentlemen a little bit more to bring you better quality Stadia content going forward. We do have an update on our memberships for YouTube. I know a lot of you have been asking about them. They've been finalised. We're just waiting on YouTube verification now, and it will go live imminently. Yeah. So just watch this space. But that's everything we've got. Have a great week, everyone. Hope you had a lovely Easter. Take care and game on. My name's been Chris.
Hi.
I've been Tom.
I've been Richie.
I know I forgot that last week, so sorry, Richie. I need to get back into that routine of We've been Sounds of Stadia. Have a great week. Bye.
Dragon Egg.
Bye.